So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey there, YouTube, the Dapper Dinosaur here. We're continuing our look at Dr. Mortensen's 2018 speech, The Big Bang, Exploding the Myth. I think we may even get into the Big Bang this time, so get your face protection ready and settle in with a nice drink and maybe a snack.
Well, I go back to Steven Weinberg. He said, "You may have noticed that despite all these brave words, I have not explained the origin of the universe. The reason, of course, is that this is a matter about which scientists still have no clear idea. It may be that we shall never know, just as we may never learn the ultimate laws of nature, but I wouldn't bet on it."
Well, it's a good thing he didn't place that bet. Turns out that in the 35 years or so since he said that, science did learn a lot more about all of those things.
Well, if I was a betting man, I'd bet big money they won't figure it all out.
Figure it all out? No, probably not. At least not for a very long time, but there's a difference between figuring it all out and having a very good and well-supported model which makes predictions that are vindicated by future data.
Think about it. We have scientists living on this little tiny speck in the universe called Earth around an average sun, which is just a speck in the Milky Way galaxy, which is just a speck among all the galaxies. And these little scientists are going to figure out all the laws of nature? I don't think so.
Right, probably not all of them, but that doesn't mean they haven't figured out what they have figured out. And that's quite a lot. And it's enough to know a lot about the universe and its history. So the fact that humans don't know everything doesn't mean they aren't learning, or that they don't know anything. After this, he just gives another quotation from the New Scientist from 20 years ago. It's the same as all the other ones. Some scientist from decades ago points out what wasn't known at the time. Okay, great.
In 2004, an article appeared in New Scientist, which is a weekly science magazine that summarizes the scientific literature, technical literature for the public.
A third quotation from New Scientists? Did you just dig through their back catalog as your primary form of research for this video? I mean, as a historian of geology, who obviously doesn't keep up to date on astronomy and cosmology, I guess that seems reasonable, but maybe you should do things like look for recent studies in peer-reviewed journals, or even just recent articles in popular science publications. But that probably sounds like too much work to do, and too much like something that might not be so easy to misrepresent.
And it's evolutionist in orientation. They published a one-page article which was also simultaneously posted on the internet. The article was entitled "Bucking the Big Bang." It was written by Eric Lerner, but it was signed by 34 scientists from 10 countries.
34 scientists. So almost none compared to how many scientists there were. Got it. Keep going.
All from prestigious universities or science organizations. And I want to read to you a few statements from that one-page article, which is still on the internet.
Okay, this isn't really a point about science, more about style. If you're telling me about some published article and giving me a year and the name of the publication and the author, the only reason you're doing it is so you can read it to me. You don't then have to go on and tell me you're going to read it. I get it. Just read it.
Big Bang Theory relies on a growing number of hypothetical entities, things which we have never observed. Inflation, dark matter, and dark energy are the most important.
Maybe 12 years before this speech was recorded, dark matter and cosmic inflation had not been well confirmed, but that is no longer the case. In fact, it was discovered that galaxy NGC 1052-DF2 has essentially no dark matter, which is evidence that the otherwise anomalous gravity of other galaxies is in fact matter of some form, with properties inferred for dark matter, and not just a misunderstanding of gravity at galactic scales, which is the other option. Cosmic inflation is the current hypothesis to explain the exact levels of anisotropy in the cosmic microwave background radiation. It is fairly well supported. But there are other options, and it is not at the level of a theory right now. Dark energy is just the name given to whatever is causing the observed effect that the current expansion of the universe is accelerating.
Now, inflation. That's not what happens to the U.S. economy.
You mean the value of a currency. Man, at least get the economics right in your jokes. Get something right.
That's what the evolutionists think happened in the first few microseconds of the universe after the Big Bang. That the universe expanded really rapidly in a few microseconds, and then since then, it's been expanding slowly.
Well, cosmic inflation can't be directly observed. It has to be inferred from current data and predict future data. So far, the first has happened, and the second is going fairly well for it, but it's not clear if the current data about this early period of the universe is accurate. Dark matter has also been very reliably observed via its gravitational effects and the lack thereof. Sure, it would be nice to get a jar of it, but so far that doesn't seem likely or possible. Dark energy is really just a name we give to whatever the cause is of the acceleration of the expansion of the universe. The expansion is real, and so whatever is causing it is just called dark energy.
Inflation, dark matter, and dark energy are the most prominent, never observed. Without them, there would be fatal contradictions between the observations made by astronomers and the predictions of the Big Bang Theory.
Which is why they were proposed in the first place. The Big Bang Theory does an excellent job of predicting a lot of phenomena, and so when we find something odd that the current theory doesn't entirely jive with, the most likely explanation is that the theory which is otherwise well supported should be modified, rather than completely tossed out, and with it all the correct predictions and the ability to make future predictions that came with that theory.
An open exchange of ideas is lacking in most mainstream astrophysics conferences.
I can't say whether astrophysics conferences have as free an exchange of ideas as they can or should.
Whereas Richard Feynman could say that science is the culture of doubt, that is because the way most scientific discoveries are made is by scientists questioning what everybody else believes about something. And saying, I'm going to ask new questions, I'm going to do some new experiments, I'm going to explore new ways, I'm not going to believe what everybody else believes about the cause of cancer or how these two chemicals can be combined.
You mean like how people doubted the steady-state universe and came up with the Big Bang based on observations inconsistent with a steady state for the universe?
In cosmology today, doubt and dissent are not tolerated, and young scientists learn to remain silent.
If that were actually true, then there wouldn't be hypotheses competing with cosmic inflation or dark matter. And dark energy isn't even a hypothesis, it's just a name given to whatever the cause of a particular effect is. The fact that there are factions with competing ideas in astronomy and cosmology shows that conformity is not the rule. But you can't confuse agreement on the most well-supported facts in a field with a lack of willingness to consider new ideas. There may well be new ideas competing in the realm of chemistry, but none of them is going to overturn the oxygen theory of fire, that is, the idea that fire is a rapid exothermic oxidation. No matter how much you might like it, chances are phlogiston theory isn't coming back. Similarly, the Big Bang is too well supported to just disappear. The arguments are around the fringe of what's already well established, as it is in all areas of science.
If they have something negative to say about the standard Big Bang model, those who doubt the Big Bang fear that saying so will cost them their funding.
At this point, it should. There just are no longer any real options that correspond with the data other than that in the past the universe had a smaller scale, and that this goes back as far as we can calculate, and that idea is extremely productive in terms of predictions of new evidence and suggesting new avenues of research. We're at the point where you're basically complaining that medical researchers who challenge the germ theory of disease and suggest that ear infections are caused by genies who snuck into your ear while you were using the bathroom are likely to lose their research funding. Yeah, anyone going that much against the evidence shouldn't be funded. And if you want to fund them, then have fun, but don't expect much out of them in terms of actual science.
Well, it might cost more than their funding. It might cost them their PhD if they don't have it yet. It might cost them tenure at the university if they don't have it yet. I know of one professor who lost his job at a major university simply for questioning the Big Bang. He wasn't a young earth, Bible-believing creationist.
You gonna give a name for this person? No? Oh well. Look, if you go against all scientific knowledge in a field, you're going to have a hard time defending your thesis. And so, a hard time getting your PhD. Similarly, if you're not teaching the science, you're going to have a hard time teaching the science as your job, and an even harder time getting tenure. What are the other options? Just hand out PhDs and tenure like candy to anyone who has a crackpot idea that contradicts the whole body of knowledge in the field they want to study in?
You see, what we need to understand is what the scientific world has done a very good job of hiding from the public, and that is that scientists are just like everybody else. They're biased. And they're driven by personal motivations.
That's not a secret or anything that's being hidden. It's the whole reason peer review is so important. I promise every scientist is just itching to take down their colleagues' papers, especially if in doing so, they can show some well-supported idea to be quite wrong. But the thing is that that's not always easy, and the more well-supported the idea is, the less likely it is that it's wrong and can be so attacked. That's how science deals with bias, by countering it with a frankly brutal process to weed out bad experiments and interpretations that are put forth with insufficient evidence because of bias.
And there's peer pressure. And peer pressure in the scientific community is intense. And it takes a courageous scientist to go against the majority.
There's peer pressure not to be embarrassingly wrong, if that's what you mean.
Well, that was 2004. I kept going back to the website over the next few years for this article. And whereas it started with 34 signatures, or 34 scientists from 10 countries, the last time I looked in 2011, it had been signed by over 400 scientists from over 50 countries, many of them from prestigious scientific institutions, bucking the Big Bang.
So, given that there are about 10,000 astronomers, this would be about 4% of astronomers, assuming all of them are astronomers, which is a stretch. Seems like overall the field does not see a huge problem here.
Well, in 2011, Scientific American had a cover story, Quantum Gaps and Big Bang Theory. Why our best explanation of how the universe evolved must be fixed or replaced. The article was written by Paul Steinhardt, who is the Albert Einstein Professor of Science and Director of the Princeton Center for Theoretical Science at Princeton University. Not a small-time, insignificant institution.
Hey! You're using a source from within a decade of the time of your speech. Awesome. And it appears to be about the fact that at the scales and energy levels of the Big Bang, the fundamental incompatibility of quantum physics and relativity become important. This is a well-known problem, and it is one of the reasons why it is difficult to predict what happened at the very earliest stages of the Big Bang. Of course, no proposed solution has eliminated the basic idea that the universe started in a hot, dense, and compact state, and then transitioned to its current relatively cool, sparse, and spaced-out state. And even better, this article is available in full, for free, on the internet.
The title of his article, The Inflation Debate, with the sub-question, is the theory at the heart of the modern cosmology deeply flawed? Steinhardt thinks the inflation theory is deeply flawed, and he has proposed what he calls a cyclic theory.
So it's important to note that this article is not arguing against the Big Bang. Steinhardt in no way rejects the Big Bang. The inflation he's talking about is the idea of cosmic inflation, in which the expansion of the universe was much faster very early on. He instead argues that given current knowledge of quantum physics, the inflation model predicts an infinitely exponentially expanding multiverse, and that this causes problems for the model from a predictive standpoint. This is in no way a rejection of the Big Bang, it's not even questioning it. But what do I know? I just read the article.
Which, in my personal opinion, is even more ridiculous, because he believes in a series of expansions and contractions of multiple universes over trillions of years.
I'm not familiar with all of his positions, but this is more or less what he proposes. And the thing is that it still involves an expanding multiverse, just one that expands at a more sedate pace and is more likely to result in universes like our own. As far as I can tell, this idea has not become terribly popular, and in no way does it cast doubt on the Big Bang.
But the only universe that we know of is the one we live in. So to believe in multiple universes over trillions of years reveals to me just how bad he thinks the Big Bang Theory is.
Except he doesn't think the Big Bang Theory is bad. He thinks the cosmic inflation hypothesis is inadequate to explain the large-scale isotropy of the universe, but that if the Big Bang occurred in a wider multiverse in which cosmic inflation ends and reverses, then it makes the statistical likelihood of such universes calculable and thereby is a better explanation of the history of the early universe. He even has made predictions based on this, and if his predictions, which are not concordant with the inflation hypothesis, prove correct, then his idea may well start to overtake the inflation hypothesis. So far, it seems that this has not happened.
Well, in the article, he has this chart showing the ultimate growth spurt of the universe, and I want to just expand that a little bit so we can see a little more clearly. Down the vertical, you've got time from the beginning of the Big Bang up at the top, and it's listed in seconds. That's 13.8 billion years. And then across the horizontal, you've got the size of the universe from nothing to its present size. And then you see that line with colors of dots down the chart. And then you see some horizontal lines. And the bottom horizontal line is the limit of direct observation. In other words, they can see only a little bit of that expansion, or if we run it backwards, shrinkage.
No.
Both axes on that graph are not linear, they are logarithmic. So in fact, what is directly observable is a large amount of expansion in terms of actual new space being generated. Now the rate of expansion as a function of size is shown as much higher on the near horizontal portion of the graph, but that lasts, according to the graph, less than 1 second and correlates to the entire observable universe expanding from the scale of less than a nucleon to about a cubic centimeter. The rest of the expansion has continued from then on, so basically this guy can't read a graph that isn't linear.
But actually, they don't observe the expansion of the universe. They observe the redshift of starlight,
which correlates strongly with distance and, due to the Doppler effect, indicates the recession of the galaxies from which the light is originating, meaning that nearly all galaxies are receding, and that the farther away they are, the faster they are receding. I don't know what Dr. Mortensen would call that, but I think the word expansion would be a decent word for it.
Well, what's that? Well, if you look at a light source in the laboratory through this apparatus, a collimator and a spectrometer, it will spread out the colors of the light spectrum, and it produces spectral lines. If you look at an object out in space through the same apparatus, it will produce a spectrum, but those spectral lines will be shifted usually towards the red end of the spectrum. Some objects are blue shifted, but most objects are red shifted, and they're not all red shifted the same amount.
Yup, and it's interesting that when we use standard candles to determine the distance to objects independently of their redshift or blue shift, it just so happens that only the closest ones, such as the Andromeda Galaxy, are blue shifted.
Well, what does that mean? Well, Edwin Hubble, after whom the famous Hubble telescope was named, interpreted that fact of redshift in the 1920s as evidence of the expansion of the universe.
Do you have any good reason to say it's not? You better have a good explanation for this wavelength shift if it's not due to recession.
And he concluded that the greater the redshift, the farther away the object is, and the faster it's moving away from us.
Well, the fact that higher redshift means a faster recession is a fact that has been verified experimentally through observation of light in particle accelerators. This isn't a guess. The distances of these objects have been independently verified through the use of standard candles. So neither of these are just a guess, they are facts. You need to accept and deal with that if you don't want to live in a fantasy. Of course, you do want to live in a fantasy, so I understand why you don't accept them.
Kind of like the Doppler effect, which you're aware of. If you're sitting in your living room and you have the draperies closed and you hear a police siren, you can tell that that police car is coming near your house, and you can know when that car passes your house and keeps going the other way because the pitch of the siren changes. And so the idea is that redshift is like that redshift means that the object is moving away from us, and blue shift, it's moving towards us. So they haven't observed the expansion of the universe. They've observed redshift, and they interpret it as evidence of motion. But that may be the wrong interpretation.
No, it's been experimentally confirmed to be caused by motion. It was a prediction of relativity, and it has been confirmed by numerous experiments, including highly accurate and precise experiments in the last few years. This is no more an unsupported interpretation of recession than actually watching that cop car shrink into the distance is an unsupported interpretation of recession. After all, just because it looks like it's getting smaller doesn't mean it's going away from you. Maybe it's just magically shrinking. Or maybe you're an idiot.
It's not proven to be the correct interpretation. It's assumed to be the correct interpretation.
You're wrong. You're so wrong.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Well, what's the next line up in the chart? Well, that's the limit of indirect observation, which means that they've got to make a bunch of assumptions to add to their observations. Well, if that's the limit of direct observations and then the limit of indirect observations, what's the rest of the chart?
Inference based on our understanding of physics, which is tested by making predictions based on what new data we should see if these inferences are accurate. So far, they seem pretty accurate.
Well, that's not based on any observations at all, because we've already used those up.
No.
It's based on the observations we do have, just like when an investigator uses blood splatter and a coroner's report to reconstruct a stabbing he cannot see directly.
That's pure imagination, based on anti-biblical, naturalistic, atheistic assumptions.
Wow, talk about emotionally charged. But if the assumption that the universe operated in the past according to the same principles that operate in the present is atheistic and anti-biblical, then I guess science is atheistic and anti-biblical. I don't happen to think it's either, at least not in principle. And if it turns out that, yeah, the core assumption of science, which is the only reason science actually works and makes progress, is bad for your religion, then your religion is wrong. That's on you to fix. And as a heads up, there are plenty of Christians who manage to not reject the very basis for science, as well as its conclusions. So maybe consult with them.
Sir Fred Hoyle is a very famous astrophysicist. He died in 2001, famous English astronomer. He was an opponent of the Big Bang and actually coined the term Big Bang. It was a term of derision. He said, "Science today is locked into paradigms. Every avenue is blocked by beliefs that are wrong. And if you try to get anything published by a journal today, you will run up against a paradigm or a model, and the editors will turn it down."
You know what's fun about Fred Hoyle, besides having been proven wrong about most of the things he said about cosmology? It's that he thought that one of the best reasons to reject the Big Bang was that it was too tied up with the ideas that correlated with Abrahamic religions like Christianity. In fact, he said the main reason it was popular is that most scientists like Genesis too much. I'm not sure if you want to rely on a discredited scientist who thought that what you're arguing against was too biblical. But hey, it's your speech.
You've maybe heard this. It's often said by evolutionists. They say creationists aren't real scientists because they don't publish their research in the peer-reviewed scientific journals.
People might say that, and it's a valid criticism that you don't publish except in trash journals that will publish about anything that confirms their bias. But really, you're not scientists because you reject the very basics of how science works, as you've demonstrated over and over in this very talk. And with that, I think we're going to end this episode. It's already at about 22 minutes. So if you liked it, please remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and if you want to be notified every single time that there's new Dapper Dino content, hit the bell icon. Also, if you'd like a one-time way to support this channel, there is an Amazon wishlist as well as a merch store. Merch store has t-shirts, blankets, pillows, mugs, stickers, just about anything you want. Both of those are linked in the description. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons, especially my $20 patrons. Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Bob Knob, The Evil Scotsman, Henry Hutanen, Chris Love, and Res Instance. My team over at Patreon are helping me make these videos, and I have tiers starting as low as $1 and going all the way up to $100. So if you'd like to help out the Dapper Dino channel and help make these videos better and possibly even more frequent, then why don't you head over there and check it out. If a recurring donation isn't right for you, but you'd still like to help out, I have a link to my Amazon wishlist in the description. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur.
So you found the skeleton. How would you tell people that this happens? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.